So, hello everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. Malheureusement, aujourd'hui, Paul Dufour, qui est dans le programme, il a eu une urgence médicale et il ne pourra pas venir aujourd'hui. Et ce qui est vraiment dommage parce qu'il apporte quand même 30 ans d'expérience de rôle aviseur pour le gouvernement fédéral. Mais je suis convaincue qu'avec ces présentateurs, qu'on va quand même bien couvrir le sujet. And we'll do this session in English and French. Whenever there are questions, you can use both languages, and I think the translation is on for everyone. And we'll start with Monsieur Michel Lachance, qui est en fait directeur des bioproduits industriels et technologiques vertes chez CQVB, ce qui est ce qu'on appelle une boîte de valorisation, Centre québécois de valorisation des biotechnologies. Et juste un peu d'informations sur Monsieur Lachance. Il est scientifique et économiste, ce qui est très utile ces jours-ci. Il a une expérience profonde en analyse industrielle, innovation technologique et développement économique. Il a été professeur universitaire en économie et gestion des ressources naturelles et aussi joué un rôle de consultant. Et maintenant, comme directeur du secteur en bioproduits industriels et technologies vertes au CQVB, il va nous donner un exemple de modèle général sur les... en fait, peut-être je laisse M. Lachance introduire ce sujet lui-même.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, mes diapos vont être en anglais et ma bouche va être en français. Mais mon cœur est dans les deux langues. Alors, ma présentation se veut évidemment des éléments de base pour être capable d'alimenter la discussion qui va suivre suite aux trois présentations. Bon, j'ai intitulé ma présentation « Des politiques durables qui peuvent promouvoir les technologies vertes ». Avant de vous parler des politiques comme telles, je pense que c'est important d'un peu situer le point de vue avec lequel je vais regarder ces choses-là. On n'est pas un centre de valorisation, c'est pas pour critiquer ma présentatrice, là, mais on est un centre de transfert de technologie, ce qui n'est pas du tout pareil. Il y a un centre au Québec qui s'occupe des transferts de technologie, de l'innovation dans le domaine des bio-industries, c'est le CQVB. Communément, moi, je dis que on appelle ça souvent le bio-clean tech, aussi les bioproduits industriels. Et notre mission, c'est d'accroître la capacité d'innovation chez les PME du Québec et de stimuler des transferts de technologie. Donc, on ne fait pas de recherche, mais on est les liens, si je peux dire, entre la recherche qui se fait et les besoins de l'industrie. Le bioproduit industriel au sein du CQVB, ça représente, pour être capable d'un peu comprendre qu'est-ce que le contenu, ça comprend la bioénergie, les biocarburants et les biocombustibles, les produits chimiques biosourcés, c'est-à-dire à base de biomasse, les matériaux biosourcés, les bioprocédés et ce qu'on appelle l'efficacité, l'éco-efficacité, c'est-à-dire ça comprend en particulier l'efficacité énergétique, mais ça comprend aussi un lot de technologies qu'on appelle de l'intensification de procédés. Et comme on peut le voir, les clean tech ou les technologies propres, c'est plus grand que les bioproduits industriels, mais les bioproduits industriels en constituent une partie importante parce que c'est toute la partie bio, c'est-à-dire biomasse de ça. Bon, maintenant, on nous avait demandé, du moins c'est ce que j'ai eu au téléphone ou par courriel, là, de dire le sujet, c'est de parler des politiques durables dans la perspective de technologie verte et de technologie propre. Donc, moi, la première question que je me suis posée, je me suis dit, bon, mais je pense que c'est peut-être important, parce qu'on nous a dit que c'était un peu un cours 101 sur les policies qu'on faisait aujourd'hui dans ce séminaire-là, ou dans ce panel-là. Donc, une politique, pour moi, ça donne deux choses principales. Ça donne une direction, une vision. C'est-à-dire qu'une politique dit où on veut aller, puis il nous présente une carte postale dynamique, intéressante, stimulante, qui motive les acteurs du secteur. mais c'est aussi un cadre de référence. Parce que cette politique-là va donner naissance à des actions, à d'autres politiques ou d'autres programmes possiblement. Et à ce moment-là, c'est important que cette politique-là balise le champ d'intervention. Si on veut faire une politique qui est efficace, il y a certains incontournables, certains impératifs. La première chose, c'est d'être capable d'évaluer, quand Denis a parlé tout à l'heure, l'étude sur les technologies propres a fait ça, c'est d'évaluer les actifs qu'on a en termes de capacité de production, en termes de ressources humaines, en termes de capacité d'innovation. Ça exige aussi qu'on évalue notre compétitivité par rapport aux autres dans les domaines que couvre la politique. Donc, c'est ce qu'on appelle en français, là, en anglais un SWOT, mais en français un FFOM, c'est-à-dire une analyse force-faiblesse, opportunité-menace, ou des fois on change certains mots pour atout, etc., mais c'est la même chose. Et une troisième chose qui est importante dans une politique, pour évaluer dès le départ, c'est les moteurs de développement. Sur quoi on va s'appuyer? Par exemple, si moi je veux développer les bioproduits industriels, un des gros moteurs actuellement, c'est la croissance de la chimie verte au niveau mondial. Et donc, ces moteurs-là, c'est comme des locomotives qui nous amènent vers l'avant. Deuxième chose qui est importante dans une politique, c'est de la justifier, cette politique-là. Là, je vais recourir à mon domaine, puis plusieurs de mes propos vont être colorés par mon champ d'action, moi, les bioproduits industriels et le biocleantech. Mais justifier ça, on parle souvent, nous, de technologie. Mais ce n'est pas des technologies qu'on vend, c'est du développement économique. Et ça, c'est important, parce que ce n'est pas du tout la même perception qu'on crée chez les acteurs et chez les politiciens et chez les intervenants. Donc, c'est important de parler de la justification en termes de développement économique, en termes d'accroissement de la compétitivité, en termes de création d'emplois, etc. On pourrait allonger chacun des thèmes, là, mais j'ai 6-7 minutes au total. Donc, et une des choses que je trouve très importante dans une politique, c'est l'engagement que représente cette politique-là. Je vais donner un exemple. Il y a 3 ou 4 années, il y a une très belle stratégie politique qui est sortie au Québec. Ça s'appelait « Pour un Québec vert et prospère ». Et ça nous disait que les technologies de l'environnement et des technologies vertes, ça pouvait devenir aussi important que l'aéronautique au Québec. Ça, c'est la vision. Mais on disait aussi qu'on pouvait justifier des emplois, etc. Il y avait un engagement dans cette politique-là, mais qui ne s'est pas complètement, en tout cas selon mon point de vue, là, puis vous pourrez me critiquer lors du panel tout à l'heure, mais qui ne s'est pas complètement matérialisé autant qu'on l'espérait, nous. Donc, cet engagement-là, il est important parce que c'est sur cette politique-là, cet engagement-là, qu'on va construire par la suite. Et quand on dit engagement, on dit destination. C'est comme une carte postale, comme je disais, où on se voit dans 5 ans, dans 10 ans, dans 15 ans, avec les résultats de cette politique-là. Autre élément, bien évidemment, quand on fait une politique, il faut déterminer des priorités. Donc, priorité, par exemple, dans le domaine du biocleantech, c'est les biomasses. Parce que les biomasses, ça devient notre matière première avec laquelle on fait. Donc, la disponibilité de biomasse, la qualité de cette biomasse-là, l'accessibilité de cette biomasse-là, ça doit être une priorité dans une politique de biocleantech. Mais on doit aussi identifier des segments, parce que peut-être que dans le champ, il y a 12 segments, puis qu'on n'est pas capable de les privilégier, les 12. Il y en a peut-être 3, 4, etc., où on doit mettre une emphase particulière. Et dernièrement, bien, il faut aussi s'occuper des acteurs, parce que ce n'est pas la politique qui va faire les résultats, c'est les acteurs. Or, il faut être capable de spécifier avec quels acteurs et qu'est-ce qu'on attend de ces acteurs-là dans la politique. Et le dernier élément, mais je vais le redire. Oups, un peu, j'ai été trop vite. Il me manque une. OK, il est ici, puis je reviendrai sur l'autre schéma après. J'ai interversé les diapos, je m'excuse. Donc, le dernier élément qui est un impératif dans une politique, c'est ce qu'on peut appeler le cadre de référence et un cadre d'action. Et ça, dans les secteurs qu'on est, le cleantech ou le biocleantech, technologie propre, bioproduits industriels, bien, il faut qu'on mise sur l'innovation. Parce que c'est le cœur de cette dimension-là. Et il faut qu'on mise sur les champions dans ce secteur-là. Parce qu'ils deviennent aussi des locomotives, des propulseurs de cette énergie, de cette dynamique-là. Il faut qu'on investisse évidemment en R&D, en production et en commercialisation. Il est en rouge parce que c'est important et je vais y revenir. Il faut créer aussi les compétences qu'on a besoin pour être capable de réaliser ce qu'on veut. Par exemple, quand les biotechnologies sont arrivées il y a une vingtaine d'années, il n'y avait presque pas de gradués en biotechnologie. On manquait de compétences. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'il y a eu des programmes qui se sont élaborés dans des universités ou des cégeps pour créer les compétences qu'on a besoin pour matérialiser le développement que la politique suggère. Et évidemment, supporter le développement des marchés. C'est relié à la commercialisation, ça, je vais y revenir un petit peu plus loin. Et dernier point, augmenter la conscience du public. Parce qu'on peut avoir une méconnaissance, une malconnaissance du public de nouvelles technologies ou de nouveaux produits ou de nouveaux bioproduits, et il faut les faire connaître auprès du public pour être capable d'avancer et de les faire accepter. Quand je dis le public, ce n'est pas juste monsieur et madame à la maison, ça peut être aussi tous les utilisateurs de ces produits-là, qui à ce moment-là deviennent des acheteurs de ces produits. Essentiel dans une politique, et ça, pour moi, c'est crucial, c'est la coordination. Si je m'en vais sur la prochaine diapo, on voit qu'on a beaucoup de politiques au Québec qui concernent le développement vert, l'économie verte ou les technologies vertes. C'est pas le manque de politique qu'on a, c'est le manque de coordination entre ces politiques-là. Quand moi, pour partir un projet, je suis obligé de jaser avec 4 ou 5 ministères qui ont des objectifs et des visions différentes, bien, je perds beaucoup de temps par rapport à mes concurrents américains, qui ont un secrétariat d'État qui s'occupe des bioproduits. Par exemple, ils ont même un programme qu'on appelle Bioproducts Program, etc. Donc, c'est pas le manque de politique qu'on a souvent, c'est la concrétisation de ces politiques-là, mais aussi la coordination entre ces politiques-là. Si on veut développer un champ sur les technologies vertes au Québec qui est fort, une bioéconomie qui est forte, mais ça prend une coordination de ces politiques-là. Évidemment, ça prend des instruments d'intervention, comme par exemple des clusters, des réseaux, du financement, du support de projets, etc. Ça prend un échéancier, ça, je n'insiste pas là-dessus, c'est banal, mais ça prend aussi un suivi. Parce que c'est un peu comme un mariage, une politique. La journée du mariage... la souris. Une politique, c'est comme un mariage. La journée du mariage, tout le monde est heureux, tout le monde est beau, tout le monde s'amuse, etc. Mais si vous ne faites pas des gestes par la suite qui entretiennent l'esprit du mariage, bien, il s'effrite et ça fait un divorce. Une politique, c'est un peu comme ça prend des gestes qui suivent la politique, un follow-up, un suivi de cette politique-là. Donc, l'autre diapo, qui était la précédente, mais je vais continuer quand même, c'est quand on parle, parce qu'on parle d'innovation, donc on parle de l'innovation au marché. Il y a plusieurs étapes dans ça. J'en avais noté 6 sur ma diapo. Les 3 premières concernent ce qu'on peut appeler la recherche et le développement. Les 3 dernières concernent la commercialisation. Il n'y a pas de ce qu'on appelle en anglais de innovation gap au niveau de la R&D. Je ne dis pas qu'on ne devrait pas mettre plus d'argent dans la R&D, c'est pas ça que je dis. Mais il y a déjà beaucoup de supports, beaucoup de programmes, beaucoup d'actions qui sont faites au niveau de la R&D. On est quand même assez capable d'avancer avec efficacité dans ça. Où il y a un problème, c'est le passage de l'innovation à la commercialisation. Denis en a un petit peu parlé tout à l'heure et a dit que, je vais vous donner quelques chiffres pour préciser une phrase qu'il avait dite, c'est juste parce qu'il n'avait pas le temps de le dire, je suis sûr. Mais aux États-Unis, ça leur prend 1,5 fois excuse-moi, j'ai mal fait ma phrase. Au Québec, ça nous prend 1,5 fois le temps que ça prend aux États-Unis pour commercialiser un produit. Donc oui, ça veut dire qu'il manque des choses. Et au niveau de l'argent, bien, ça nous coûte 3 fois plus cher que là-bas. Pourquoi? Parce qu'on refait des choses, etc. 80% des projets qu'on finance échouent à cette étape-là. Donc, c'est important d'améliorer. Je pense que je peux. Il ne marche pas, OK. Donc, il n'y a pas de innovation gap. Par contre, il y a un commercialization gap. Il y a un trou au niveau de la commercialisation Et un des messages, parce que j'ai 2 ou 3 messages que dans ma petite présentation je voulais vous faire, c'est, je pense que les politiques doivent viser sur la pré-commercialisation. On a un programme au Canada qui s'appelle IRAP, ou Paris en français, qui aide la recherche et le développement chez les promoteurs à amener un projet proche de la commercialisation. Il devrait avoir un programme semblable pour la pré-commercialisation, pour être capable d'amener les gens à avancer dans ce domaine-là. Et ça, c'est crucial parce que, comme on disait, 80% des projets n'aboutissent pas à cause de ça. 35% des entreprises qui ont été sondées récemment au Canada, pas juste au Québec, disent qu'ils sous-estiment les difficultés qu'il y a à cette étape-là. Donc, une politique de développement durable, si on veut encourager les promoteurs dans le développement durable, bien, ça serait important de miser ça. Là, mes autres diapos, je ne m'en souviens pas toutes par cœur, mais il m'en reste 2. On peut-tu attendre quelques minutes? Oui? OK. Oh, c'est ça, les thèmes, parce que ça, c'est important aussi. Les opportunités de marché, c'est crucial d'être capable d'encourager ça. Les technologies de développement, les réglementations et les standards. Si on veut exporter, par exemple, Denis disait tantôt que certaines firmes exportaient beaucoup, mais pour être capable d'exporter, il faut être capable de répondre aux standards, aux normes des pays étrangers. Et la dernière ligne sur cette diapo-là est cruciale aussi. On n'a plus beaucoup de projets qui se font par une seule entreprise. Et ça, les politiques, il faut qu'ils en tiennent compte. De plus en plus, il y a des partenariats, il y a des collaborations inter-entreprises qui se font. Et ça, c'est crucial que ça soit partie prenante dans les stratégies d'entreprise. Et même, il devrait y avoir de l'argent pour aider à créer des partenariats comme ça. Donc, créer des incitatifs pour l'innovation en commercialisation et pour la création de collaborations efficaces. Mettre un programme de Commercialization Preparedness Assistance Program comme le IRAP au Canada, promouvoir des entreprises phares et des grappes, excusez, j'ai oublié le mot en voyant le mot anglais, et être capable aussi d'avoir une politique ferme, c'est-à-dire qu'elle dit vraiment où on s'en va, mais en même temps flexible, parce qu'il peut y avoir des disparités, soit au niveau régional, soit au niveau de secteur, et aussi des disparités par rapport à ce qu'on avait prévu et ce qui se réalise. Donc, ça me permet de faire le tour d'horizon. Merci.
And after this introduction of a more general model, I'd like to invite Roger Gaudreault as a more specific example from the paper and pulp industry. So, Monsieur Gaudreault, he says that he's corporate director of scientific development and innovation at Cascades, Canada. And he has a bachelor in chemistry, a master's in pulp and paper, and a PhD in molecular modeling. And he pursued postdoctoral studies at Harvard with under supervision of David Weiss and Thierry van der Ven. And his research, postdoctoral research, was on the kinetics of colloids aggregation. I'm correct? One important thing to mention is that he's an affiliated member of the Center in Green Chemistry in Catalysis, CGCC. And what's important is that he's the first corporate representative in this committee. Monsieur Gaudreault has over 25 years of experience in the pulp and paper industry. And he started 2 North American R&D consortia covering Canada and the United States. And he has developed the Cascades Innovation Strategy and is currently leading its implementation. So I leave it up to Monsieur Gaudreault.
Okay, I hope computer will work. Okay, so hi everybody. This is my first exposure to such an audience. So please be understanding. Okay, so my talk is from green to sustainable technology. The reason is clear that a lot of people, a lot of technology, a lot of chemistry is claimed green, but from my perspective and our perspective, the green is not enough. So we have to target the sustainability of a product, or of a technology. So this is my just the highlights of my presentation. Next slide is to Cascade was founded in 1964 by the Lemaire brothers, and our business model is close the loop, so we're involved in each of these steps. In 2007, we launched the phase 1 of innovation, which is a funnel. At university, you all know about funnels, and this one is our innovation management system. And we launched this because we wanted to structure Cascade to be better at innovation. Oh, sorry. But phase 2 started last year, and phase 2 is to improve our efficiency to innovate. And as you can see, the theme is to be a leader in innovation. And the 5 funnels that you see here are the integration of each of the 5 sectors of activity of Cascade to make sure that we are, as an organization, better to innovate. By the way, this flower is protected 120 years in Canada and US, so this is protected. So I'm going to give you now only a few. These are a few examples of innovative products, new products, and innovation. And as you can see, there are different, a lot of diversity in these products: paper-based, plastic-based, and because Cascade is involved in both these fields. And I'm going to comment about this a bit later. Yeah, from green to sustainable technology. So whether it's sustainable technology, green technology, right now the regulations have to be well defined and operationalized since materials are developed. In other words, all these new materials are under development at the moment worldwide, and there's a tremendous amount of activities, and I think this whether in the near future we will see commercial application of these. There's a first, or there's a few right now, pilot plant in the world, including, of course, the one in Windsor here in Quebec, and but somewhere you will see these products. But as these products are developed, as an industry, we need regulations. We need to know which one is greener or not, and we need to know also the toxicity levels and what are going to be the potential impact on human resources, on ecosystems, on non-renewable resources, and so on. So these are the coming technologies that will have to be addressed in terms of policy and, of course, regulations. And as you can see, also Cascade will be launching very soon the XPS plastics, which is extruded polystyrene for food application. This will be, by the way, a North American first. And at the moment, of course, there is no regulation for such situations. So these also have to be addressed. When we need to know and when we need to determine, of course, the level of green, the level of clean, the level of sustainability, I think the best tool from our perspective is life cycle analysis. And I'm only giving you one example here where Cascade, we have done pioneering work to do the first life cycle analysis on water for one of our mills. And as you can see, in 2000, the difference between 2008 and 2002 is that we have installed a clarifier, which is a unit which, in a sense, keeps the solids and the solids in the mill before we send it to the river. So therefore, although you have, let's say, effluent treatment with a certain efficiency, since you bring less in the effluent, so you have less going to the river. And in that respect, because we were using less water, so by the reduction, the water was reduced by 5.3 cubic meter to 2.86, so by 2, roughly speaking, and we reduce our environmental footprint. But however, life cycle analysis, this is of environment, but you need also to have life cycle analysis on social, when you think in terms of sustainability, and of course the economics has to be considered, and all these has to be of course, developed and addressed in the future. So our message is simple, and has been said by the two other speakers. And since companies' long-term survival depends on sustainability, sustainable development, existing incentive tax credits should be broad enough to reflect sustainable innovation. And again, innovation is from the idea to commercialization, and by the way, the definition of innovation is a commercial success. Anything in between is not an innovation. So having said that, we need to commercialize, and clearly The commercialization phase, in our language, Cascade, we call that the go-to-market, in a sense when the paper is ready to be sold, and then we have to make it a commercial success. This is our go-to-market, and this is by far the most expensive period. And we need to definitely, as a government, to address this. In conclusion, the innovation equal profitability, but sustainability, sustainable innovation is equal to sustainable prosperity. So thanks for your attention, and I'll be happy to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, the question part we keep for later. We will now call our last presenter, Velma McColl, who has been for the last 8 years with her Earnscliffe strategy group. And from what I understood, she has a very deep understanding of both business, government, and policy. So I hope she'll enlighten us about these aspects and how to bridge it. So just to give you a little idea about Velma, so prior to joining Earnscliffe, she advised several federal cabinet ministers on political strategy, policy, and communications. So I guess in many instances you had an advisory role. And I think what's important mentioning as well, what you showed me. Oh yeah, right. She's a co-founder of the Canadian Clean Technology Coalition, and Women in GRN plays a leadership role with several organizations, including Sustainable Austerity and the Ryan's Well Foundation.
Thank you. Thank you. One thing I'll just mention at the outset, I have a sore throat, so just bear with me, okay? I'll do my best. All of the speakers this morning have set us up very well for the discussion, and I think we're all looking forward to having a discussion with you, because really we're using clean tech as an example of how you do sustainable public policy. And I'm a specialist, I'm a student of public policy, and it's what I call the soft technologies. So we have great hard technologies in the clean tech sector. We have 15 years of evolution and growth from being small sort of popcorn companies across the country who were starting at the R&D end, and now they're getting closer and closer to commercialization. We have specialization across a wide array of sectors. What Denny showed you this morning, one of the messages that we've taken into government at every level is don't think of clean tech only as renewable energy. You have to see the full breadth of it. It's biochemistry, it's soil remediation, it's it's energy efficiency. It's massive. There are 9 subsectors within clean tech. And the other message that we've taken is really it's emerging as a strong economic sector. It's a driving economic sector for our future. And as was mentioned this morning, there was a discussion about the linkages between clean tech and aerospace. But clean tech is now where aerospace was 10 or 15 years ago. And so from a public policy point of view, we draw that analogy so that we can explain to the public, to decision makers, to politicians, to companies who would invest, to financiers who would invest, about what the long-term potential is. Because the clean tech market globally will be somewhere between $2 and $3 trillion by 20, and I mean there's a debate among the economists about which number it is, but it's massive growth, and we're essentially a $9 billion industry now in Canada, and we have the potential to grow to a $60 billion industry by 2020. So that means there's a huge amount of potential there, but from a public policy perspective, from a moving all of these innovations, moving all of the people that you've heard from this morning who are working basically at the front lines of innovation, who are trying to put together all the pieces, we have to start, as I would say, climbing up the hill and looking further out over the valley and telling a more aggregated story, telling a more comprehensive story about the long-term potential. And some of that is doing it from an economic perspective. Because traditionally what happened with clean tech was we tended to look at clean tech as a downstream of environmental policy. So when we had a big push on air quality or acid rain or climate change, we expected that policy regulations would drive a push into clean tech, and that, you know, sometimes using carbon markets or SO2 markets or other kinds of public policy tools, we would drive the uptake of clean tech. Well, the evolution of clean tech in Canada and indeed globally has not been from environmental regulation. It's been because we're starting to see more and more large companies like Rogers driving innovation into the core of their existing processes, and then small technologies who are coming along and who are able to sell overseas largely. That was something interesting that Denny said, that we've seen bear out in every one of the 9 subsectors. And it's a terrible thing about for Canada, because someone said, and I think it's true, Canada has a very strong Buy America policy. Because for our own clean tech companies, we tend to go outside of our country to look for those innovations. We tend to look outside of Canada's borders for those innovations, and we should be looking at home. So one of the policy recommendations that's been made over and over again is for a domestic procurement program. So whether that's governments who have massive purchasing power, municipalities, provincial governments, federal governments, domestic procurement, but also what we call the large technology adopters. So that would be our traditional industries, forestry, pulp and paper, mining, oil and gas, traditional sectors. If we could create more of a marriage between those in adopting our clean technologies, I think we'd see a big advance coming in the next little while. And we're starting to see bits and pieces. But again, from a public policy point of view, in order, because you all come from different backgrounds and you're all going to apply this in different ways, from a public policy point of view, you have to have a strong technical case, and you have to know indeed what your specific ask is. But you also have to be able to weave it into the current dynamics and the current politics, the current social, and where the public is at, where businesses are at, what they're going to do. So you do have to do that analysis that was laid out for you this morning. So I guess clean tech as an example is actually quite exciting, because it is on the cusp of a big change. Over the course of the next 5 to 10 to 20 years, from here to 2030 really, we're going to see a massive change in a number of our core systems, our energy systems, our water systems, our municipal systems, our infrastructure. And we have the opportunity to adopt a more sustainable approach to those. And interestingly, we have enough people who are seeing the economic potential of creating and offering sustainable options in all of those areas, so that we can see that change start to happen. But the status quo is a very powerful, it's a very, very powerful force. I often talk about the weight of the status quo, because when you're trying to change from the status quo to a new paradigm, the status quo has a lot of pulling power. There's a set of people who are very comfortable in the status quo, who don't want to see things change, who have been profitable in the status quo, who have been politically or socially acceptable in the status quo. So the weight of the status quo can be very, very heavy, sometimes oppressive. And what you have to do is you have to be as creative as possible in making your case, in drawing out the technical case that I talked about, but also the broader social story, and be able to cast forward. You know, in systems of change, in business systems, we talk about, a growth curve, and the growth curve often goes like this. You know, a struggle, the valley of death in innovation, we call it, coming up the growth curve and then eventually decline. And we are in a period where we're seeing that growth curve coming across a number of traditional industries, and then a new, more sustainable paradigm coming along. But right now, I'm sorry I'm drawing this in the air, but in the overlapping if you can imagine a Venn diagram here, where the old is in cresting and in decline, and the new is beginning. They call this the zone of paradox. And so I would argue that right now, and it's not just true in clean tech, it's true in healthcare, it's true in a number of areas, it's true in biosciences, it's true in genomics, it's true in a number of areas. We're in a period right now that I can quite clearly identify as the zone of paradox. So in terms of a blueprint for sustainable public policy, what I suggest to you is you have to do your technical homework, which means your hard technology. You have to know what your technology, you have to know what your product is. You have to understand, again, the soft technology side of it. What are the actual, what's the public environment like? Sometimes people want to avoid that and they just want to go direct to decision makers and say, I have this great technology, you should adopt it, and then they wonder why they don't go anywhere. We do operate in a collective culture, so we do have to do a little homework on the soft technology side of it as well. But then if you make your case, and the other thing is you have to be persistent, relentless, have a good sense of humor. Over time you'll get there, because the other thing is these kinds of changes, excuse me, don't happen. They don't happen overnight. It takes 1, 2, 5, 10 years. And so the other thing that you have to do is you have to chunk things up, and you have to learn to identify where the early wins are, and understand that wins, small though they may be at the beginning, are still wins, and they're moving you in a direction. So I think I'll stop there, because we're lucky enough to be on a panel, and which means that we get to engage with all of you. And so I know all of us are looking forward to a lively discussion with you, and please ask any of us to go further into the areas that we've touched on this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Velma, and the other speakers for great presentations. So I would like to open up now the discussion, and actually I would like to open it up with a question like that. I'm coming from, well, as an employee of Genome Québec, we invest in research, and especially with an emphasis on the translational part. And so both like Genome Canada and the centers, we're always trying to figure out, so what are the best programs to develop to actually reach this translational stage? What do we have to do to promote this adoption of what we invest in? And so I was wondering if you have an idea of what the main obstacles are, like between the R&D, new knowledge, innovation, and the actual adoption in Canada, and how we could possibly change programs in place and make key players talk to each other. Because I mean, in the programs, what I feel is that we have a problem to link all the bits and pieces together in one program and just push it through to implementation. So I don't know who wants to. I hope the mic works.
Can you just rephrase it a little bit?
So I was wondering, so if you have an idea of what do we have to do in Canada to push for implementation, like of new technologies that are developed. I mean, the government invests in a lot of the development of technologies, and we do, and that was mentioned by several speakers this morning, we do have outstanding technologies, but the main problem is the adoption. What do we have to do in our programs to make this translation possible, to actually get these things out, make people use them, convince governments to use them? And so what are the main obstacles in your mind?
That's a wide question, because the technologies are diversified. But I can tell you one example that in Cascades we launched in May 2010, and we call that an antibacterial hand towel. And this paper, before we launched it, it took 5 years of research. And so since we launched it, we have continued to invest tremendously, because of course we have to implement it. And the main challenges we've been having, other the technical and scientific challenges, is the fact that the regulations because sometimes you have a product, which was our case, where there is no regulation. Okay, so I mean, our product this category of product was not existing in Canada. It was a world first, and it took very much time. I would say you can say 2, 3, 4 years to discuss with government, and that define, of course, the category for you, and then you have to answer all the questions that they needs to be addressed, and so once you have this product. The development is always continuing because there's so many applications for the potential applications for this product, and now we just a month ago we just got the FDA. I'm not sure we call that a non-objection letter or something like this. No, it's not. FDA. We all think this, but they never approve something. They just
don't object.
They don't object. Let's put it this way. So we got that letter a month ago, but the category in the US is not the same as in Canada. So now we have to deal with totally different, of course, regulations aspects and questions to answer and stuff like this. So I think on this product, and I can give you other examples, of course, but on that product, this has been the main challenge where we have lost a lot of time. We learned from these difficulties, and now we know how to go on other products to push the new innovations. And but I think I would give this example for the moment. And also, of course, now we want to extend this and this technology. And then we have to go back to universities and partnership with universities. And the other challenge I would say is when you bring a product like this in business, there is the B2B business and the B2C business. Okay, so Cascade is by far it's a B2B business. But when you get to a product like this, you have to deal directly with hospitals, you have to deal directly with clinics, with pharmacies and stuff like this. And now you're getting to a more personal relationship or small markets, and this you have to adapt your way of thinking, your way of approaching the clients and stuff like this. So this is the difficulty that we've been having to implement this product, and we're still working hard on it.
Donc, mais je vais continuer en français vu que vous aviez l'air à avoir compris ce que je voulais dire. Je dirais qu'il y a 5 difficultés importantes pour passer de l'innovation au marché ou au succès du marché. C'est pas juste au marché, mais au succès du marché. Bon, je vais commencer par la première dont vient de parler mon prédécesseur, la réglementation. Je vais donner un autre exemple bien simple. On a au Québec une entreprise qui est en partie publique, mais qui fait des matériaux biocomposés. Ils sont capables de faire des maisons à 8 étages, tout en bois, en matériaux de bois composite, à l'épreuve du feu, et ils construisent des maisons comme ça en Angleterre. Et ici, ça vient tout juste de commencer à être permis par la Société d'hypothèque et logement du Québec, parce qu'ils n'avaient pas accepté les normes. Parce que quand on a un produit nouveau, il y a des fois le principe de précaution qui agit beaucoup trop fort. Je suis d'accord avec le principe de précaution. Il ne faut pas prendre des risques stupides. Mais en même temps, quand c'est un produit nouveau, puis qu'on le juge avec les yeux d'un ancien produit, bien ça prend beaucoup de temps de l'accepter. Parce que il est nouveau, il est différent, donc il ne peut pas avoir exactement les mêmes fonctionnalités. Donc il faut avoir une grille d'analyse qui soit différente, et ça, malheureusement, ça ne se fait pas rapidement. Deuxième point où on a un obstacle pour passer de l'innovation au marché, c'est les entrepreneurs. On a beaucoup d'entreprises qui ferment, pas parce que la technologie est mauvaise. L'entreprise ferme pas parce que, mais on dit après coup que c'est une technologie orpheline. Pourquoi? Parce qu'on n'avait pas les bons entrepreneurs pour la mettre sur le marché. Parce que quand on est dans un marché de l'innovation, les premiers entrepreneurs, souvent, c'est des gens qui sont du côté de la R&D. Mais ça ne fait pas nécessairement les bonnes personnes du côté de commercialisation. Et ça, on essaie de faire comprendre à un prof d'université, de dire « Oui, mais c'est pas toi, tu connais... Ah, écoute, j'ai fait un MBA. Oui, mais le MBA, c'est juste pour comprendre ce que je te dis. C'est pas pour être capable de développer des stratégies. Et j'ai pas de mépris pour les MBA. Mais c'est ça un MBA. C'est des roches, si vous voulez. Mais un MBA, il pense qu'il peut tout faire, mais il n'est pas un spécialiste en marketing. Il connaît les rudiments du marketing. Donc, troisième obstacle pour faire cette translation-là, cette traduction-là, pardon, c'est évidemment j'ai perdu mes feuilles. J'avais réglementation. OK. Donc, le troisième obstacle majeur, c'est quand on n'est pas capable, avec l'innovation, de rejoindre le consommateur ou l'utilisateur. Quand on parle, par exemple, de produits chimiques biosourcés, les gens qui sont les acheteurs de produits chimiques dans les entreprises sont des gens qui ont été formés à la chimie traditionnelle et qui sont méfiants envers la chimie verte. Donc, eux autres aussi, il faut qu'ils soient adaptés à ça. Et il n'y a personne qui les forme, il n'y a personne qui les informe la plupart du temps, puis c'est avec eux qu'on négocie, malheureusement. Ben, je dis malheureusement, c'est des bonnes personnes, là. Mais en termes d'adoption, d'innovation, ce n'est pas nécessairement des bonnes personnes. Et ça aussi, c'est un obstacle majeur. Autre obstacle, c'est évidemment le public. Parce que le public peut être méfiant envers un nouveau produit, comme il peut être enthousiaste, frénétique et follement pour un nouveau produit aussi. Mais en général, il y a un peu cette crainte-là. Et dernier obstacle, parce qu'il y en a peut-être d'autres, là, mais c'est ce qu'on peut appeler le greenwashing. Parce que vous allez à l'épicerie, puis quasiment tous les nettoyants domestiques maintenant sont appelés bio. Et quand le consommateur n'est pas capable de décider lequel est le plus bio et lequel est le vrai bio dans ça, on bien c'est-tu juste une étiquette pour nous faire coller à une tendance, mais à un moment donné, ça discrédite automatiquement un champ d'ouverture. Alors, peut-être d'autres idées nous reviendront, mais c'est les points majeurs.
I think that the translation happens where there's a strong ecosystem. So, Roger develops research in a company that understands that it's coming, that he has a team of people who would begin working on what does it mean, what would it look like as a product, all those kinds of things, but that's inside his company as an ecosystem, because most people who develop, who are doing science or who are doing development of a technology are most often in isolation. It's part of the reason, it's part of the rationale for the whole cluster strategies, is because at least you were pooling the hard technologies, the R&D, the science part of it with the soft technologies and beginning to lay the ground, because the biggest thing I think is you have to keep looking down the road. So as I said, it's so often in science or with an innovation, people develop it and they say, I got it, I figured it out. And then they go, so where's the rest of the world? But somebody has to be walking down the road in front of that innovation and saying, these are the possible things it could do. These are, you need to talk to us. You need to build, you really need to think about it like an ecosystem. You need an ecosystem of academics, of business people, of financiers. You need to, but you always have to lift your eyes and cast them down the road and be thinking ahead. Because I think the better we could do in collectively supporting the translation side, the more we can be forging some of those relationships early, I think the quicker we get the uptake.
But to create this ecosystem, I think this is where the paradigm shift has to happen, because everyone is used to work in isolation. And so to get these people to talk to each other and to actually work on a common goal, I find this is one of the major challenges. Because the idea, how to create this ecosystem? So you have people that promote things from different angles.
Yeah, well, we all have to challenge our assumptions, because science doesn't exist in a petri dish away from everything, and a technology, a perfectly honed technology, doesn't exist in a petri dish either. It's going to have to meet the world at some point. So we need to challenge our own assumptions as well.
Maybe I can add to this one. I think, it's been mentioned that now we realize that more and more developments, innovations are cross companies, cross competencies, and stuff like this. So, and I say this is the reality in Cascade more and more, even because Cascade has 2-3 groups, and we work more and more with the groups now. And we have structured ourselves also differently. But I think open innovation is I know it's a buzzword, but I think it's something that really we are there now. And it's it becomes so complicated in some areas. So when you have to combine technologies, and in order to do this, you have to do the open innovation between all partners, all different companies. So this is definitely something to, I would say, to shrink the go-to-market, or to shrink the technology development.
Yeah, I mean, open source helps, some of the things that Google does. That changes our psychology about how we approach those things.
Nine Sigma is a good example.
Yes.
You can contact 2 million people instead of having one-to-one contact or with few universities. So there's tremendous now tools that are out there to accelerate innovation. Maybe I'd like to say one thing to the government, in a sense that I think it's important to realize that having a technology, having the science aspect developed is one thing, but when you get to the commercialization, I have to say that it's a different business, a different field of let's say different type of aspects, and I think the government should not play the role of the commercialization. It should favor, it should help, it should make it easier for us. But there is actually, at the moment, a network in Canada, which is in a sense the purpose of this network is to commercialize, or it's the commercialization phase they call it. Okay, so it's great science. I have to say that this network is doing absolutely great science. There was no product in phase 1 of the network, and second, there is still no products out there at the moment. And they're struggling to have products, and but it's ironic because it's all these university professors who have the job now. Of course, let's say working with other people to do this commercialization phase, and it's not their job. It's not the phase of the government. It's not. This is the responsibility of the companies. Mm-hmm. Although it's expensive, although we have to work with a lot of partners and regulations and all that stuff. So this is important because I've seen this. For me, it's the first time I participate to such a situation, and I think the government should be very careful in doing this. However,
so the idea is to get government and universities to talk to each other more, or through programs.
No, because at the end, this money that is dedicated to this network was given to universities in that respect, but their job, is to commercialize something which there's no product yet.
Yes.
So I think this is one thing. The other thing, regarding this, and that will be my second point, is that this is why we're claiming that the innovation, let's say when you look at the R&D tax credits, okay, it only covered the R&D, and I have to say that a lot of top management were frustrated because they think that the innovation is the responsibility of R&D. But I'm sorry, the innovation is from the idea to the production to the marketing, the salespeople, and all these people. And R&D does not control all these aspects. No way. So therefore, R&D is a critical point, a critical aspect of innovation. And the government now is giving money so far, to the R&D people, and it's okay. It's well appreciated. I think it's important, and I think in Quebec we've been quite successful at this. But now the government has to move one more steps, okay, to help. And I think the best example that I've seen, and it's only since last year, because when that was announced, I was there, and it was the first time in Canada that the government was giving money to a first commercialization applications, which is, for example, Windsor in this case. See, so this you have to do. The government has to do more of this, and even maybe extend even more. So this, I think, a great example of helping, let's say, at the commercialization step.
Yeah, and I mean, my hats off to the program organizers, because the next speaker who's coming after us will talk to you about how the government is looking at innovation in its own approach. So there was a Jenkins panel last year, and Novena Robinson is here and can talk to us about what, but the whole purpose of that is to say that the government system of doing innovation is old and outdated, and it needs an overhaul. And so a set of recommendations were made. We can have a debate about whether they went far enough or if they do enough, but that is beginning to happen, and they are. We've seen over the last 20 years, the government was most interested in the R&D side, and then they progressively tried to move their investments towards commercialization, but they're still very, I don't know how to say this in French, ham-fisted, very awkward, very gawky about how they do it just yet. So there could be unionization coming in that area. No questions from the floor?
Yep, Michel just wanted to say one more
Sure.
thing.
No, if there is question, no problem, come at the microphone. Okay, I will just, before, just 3 points, 3 small points. I said that earlier, but I want to emphasize it. Une des parties difficiles de l'innovation vers le marché, c'est la pénétration de nouveaux marchés. Et une des façons, il y a plusieurs façons de remédier à ça ou d'aider à ça, mais une des façons à laquelle moi je crois beaucoup pour être capable de faciliter l'entrée d'un marché par un nouveau produit, puis dans le cas des bioproduits industriels, la plupart du temps, c'est des nouveaux produits, mais qui sont des substituts à des produits déjà existants. Donc, il y a une méfiance, etc. C'est ce que moi j'appelle le pouvoir, le devoir même d'exemplarité des gouvernements.
Aux États-Unis, il y a un programme qui s'appelle Bioproducts et qui dit que les politiques gouvernementales vont premièrement encourager des produits bio-sourcés. Puis on les catégorise, on les norme, etc. Mais à ce moment-là, ça donne une possibilité. Je vais vous donner un exemple simple. On est un pays du bois, l'industrie forestière est en difficulté depuis de nombreuses années. Vous allez en Europe, en France, qui ont beaucoup moins de bois que nous, proportionnellement, j'entends, et presque tous les centres de sport sont en structure de bois. Puis avec des belles structures. Indépendamment du climat, on est capable de résister à ça maintenant.
Et ici, vous en avez 1 ou 2 arénas qui sont comme ça. Donc, et ça, c'est, Denis en avait parlé depuis le début, les pouvoirs publics là, et les organisations publiques qui ont un rôle à jouer dans, par exemple, l'achat préférentiel. Mais l'achat préférentiel, c'est pas juste pour faire un achat préférentiel, c'est parce que ça permet à un produit d'entrer sur le marché. Et ça, c'est crucial. Deuxième point rapidement, de plus en plus, je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, mais je reviens là-dessus parce que je trouve que c'est très important, les alliances et les partenariats. On voit ça partout maintenant, même des très gros qui s'allient entre nous. Bon, ça fait partie d'un peu l'open innovation, mais ça dépasse ça incontestablement. Et ici au Québec, on a une méfiance des partenariats et des alliances. Quand j'organise quelque chose sur, par exemple, je vais donner un secteur, parce que c'est connu, je ne donnerai pas de nom, j'organise quelque chose sur les biolubrifiants, puis là, il y a un industriel qui me dit « Un tel, es-tu là? » Oui. « Ah, ok, moi je ne vais pas. » Ça n'a pas de bon sens quand on entend ça au 21e siècle. On n'est pas au siècle des Lumières. Hein? Donc, et ça, je pense qu'il devrait y avoir quelque chose pour aider les entrepreneurs à améliorer leurs possibilités de collaboration, de partenariat et d'alliance, et aussi d'être capable de mieux les faire, ces alliances-là, et ne pas avoir peur nécessairement de faire une alliance avec un gros, parce que il y a des choses qu'il faut protéger pour chez nous, mais ça ne veut pas dire qu'on va. Et dernier point, je reviens sur ce que disait mon prédécesseur, mais je crois aussi fondamentalement, j'avais une diapo que vous n'avez pas vue, ça disait « Government is an enabler ». Le gouvernement est un facilitateur. But the innovation, commercialization stage has to be led by the industry. Ça, c'est bien clair. Parce que c'est eux qui font ça. Donc, quand vous arrivez devant un ministère et qui essaye de tout, vous dire « Non, je connais ça, etc. », des fois, ils écoutent un peu les industriels. Ça ne veut pas dire faire de l'accommontrisme, mais ils connaissent les conflits et les difficultés avec lesquels ils sont, et si on veut avancer et au même rythme que les autres provinces, que les États-Unis, je pense qu'il faut avancer dans ce domaine.
Merci, Michel. Peut-être on laisse le public, une chance au public de poser des questions. Allez-y.
Okay, so you've touched on this a little bit, but you've mostly been talking about sort of problems that companies or innovators have moving towards commercialization. But from the point of view of policy, do you have recommendations, things that are starting to happen or that you think should be happening more to facilitate, to enable, like government policies to enable this commercialization and facilitate the process?
well, we are seeing some. So I spoke to you about domestic procurement. And over the last couple of years, the federal government has started to look at a procurement program. It's not targeted, I mean, we're talking today about clean tech. It's not targeted at clean tech, but it does start to recognize that domestic procurement plays a role in the commercialization process. So that's one thing. There's IRAP, SHRED, tax credits, those kinds of programs. Those were deemed to be very strong. Obviously, there are recommendations for how those can be tweaked. I think more investment in general, and that was, you know, they had a big pot of money, and they said, how could we reallocate within a big pot of money? So some of that is happening, and I think at the federal level, at least, Nobina will probably provide you with a more fulsome answer in the next session.
OK. Comme disait la précédente panéliste, beaucoup de choses ont été dites par rapport à la question qui vient d'être posée, donc on répète peut-être un peu, là. Mais moi, ce que j'aimerais beaucoup qu'il se passe rapidement au Québec, c'est qu'il y ait un énoncé de politique qui dit que le clean tech et les bioproduits industriels, c'est une priorité économique. Pas une priorité technologique, une priorité économique, et on a tous les ingrédients pour prendre notre place sur le marché, du moins sur certains marchés par rapport à ça. Mais ça prend, ce que je disais tout à l'heure, une vision, un engagement. Et ça, il faut que ça soit aussi transmis dans toutes les structures ministérielles du gouvernement du Québec. Parce que vous avez beau avoir une politique qui va toucher le ministère du Développement économique, puis là, vous avez à négocier avec le MAPAC ou avec le MRNF, Ressources naturelles ou agriculture, pour certaines dimensions de ça, puis eux autres, ils ne croient pas à la politique que la MDE a faite. Ben, c'est comme s'il n'y avait pas de politique. Donc, ça prend une vision gouvernementale, pas d'un ministère, pour le clean tech et les bioproduits industriels, pour dire c'est une industrie qui peut devenir comme l'industrie aéronautique au Québec, parce qu'on a des forces dans ça, incontestables. On a des leaders de grosses compagnies, puis on a une capacité de recherche. En chimie verte, 35% des chercheurs canadiens sont ici au Québec. Mais c'est pas banal, ça. Donc, il faut qu'on capitalise là-dessus, mais ça prend une vision qui est imposée, entre guillemets, imposée à l'ensemble des ministères pour pas qu'on soit obligé de recommencer des discussions.
Roger, vous voulez dire quelque chose?
I have an example for your answer, to answer your question regarding, but it's a process, but still, you know, it's regarding the competitiveness of the industry. For example, the regulations in the effluent treatment is based on the toxicity test with the trout, and so they measure, you know, the percentage of the trout that is dying in the effluent as it is, and then you make some dilution. So Cascade has been trying to change this, but we have not been successful so far. And the reason why we're trying to change this is because Cascade, we use 5 times less water than the rest of the Canadian industry. Okay, this is our average of all of our products is 12.5 cubic meter, and the industry in Canada is 60. So roughly 5 times less. So we intuitively we have been reducing water because we thought it was good for the environment. We were saving energy, so we were saving dollars. And the analysis, the LCE that I did with one of my colleagues, you know, shows that not only we were having a lower environmental footprint, but it was also economically good because we were saving energy. In other words, we're saving natural gas, and because we need less water. And if you use less natural gas, you bring in the emissions less CO2. You see, but the government only looks at this test. However, if you look at the total solids or the amount of solids per ton of pulp, we are better because we keep these solids inside the mill instead of sending it to the river. So number one, we have less solids. Although our effluent is more toxic because we don't dilute it, we concentrate on chemicals. Our effluent, as it is more toxic, but we send less solids, contaminants in the river, number one, and we obviously send less CO2 in the air. So, but the government still sticks on this issue, doesn't want to change, this regulation, and we have two great arguments, I believe, that, this regulation should be changed. So yes, this is a break, it prevents us to save even more CO2 emissions and money, because we are ready, and this is one of our key performance indicators, to reduce more and more water. But as soon as we get the toxicity test, as we fail, so we have to dilute more and use more water. So this is a nonsense on from many perspectives, but this is, I think, one aspect that prevents us to be even more competitive. Although, we use much less water than the rest of the industry. But that's not regarding the development of products or innovation, but it's a process aspect.
Let's take another question from the audience.
So all of you seem to have recommendations about how the government should reallocate funds to promote commercialization of these clean tech innovations. My question has to do with the fact that in recent economic circumstances, obviously money is tight in government, and there's been slashes by the Harvard government for the basic production of knowledge concerning the environment. You see it with slashing of DFO jobs, the closure of the experimental lakes area, things that have advanced the environmental policies of Canada over the last 20 years. So, although it's nice to say that we should have more money going towards commercialization of that knowledge, we need a foundation of that knowledge to begin with. If we want to keep that within domestic, like you should mention, in Canada, that procurement of knowledge. So my question is do we need to reevaluate the way in which perhaps investigators, researchers are being trained in Canada, maybe include commercialization, knowledge about intellectual property, that sort of thing, for researchers, so that they're more aware as a way to inform them of ways to commercialize the information that they would be producing. Because there simply isn't enough money to go around to maintain a high quality of research in Canada, as well as probably the kind of commercialization funding that you advocate.
Deux réponses. Ma réponse en deux parties là-dessus. Je vais vous donner un premier exemple, une illustration. Il y a une grande différence entre le clean tech et le green tech. Le green tech, il y a 20 ans, était basé sur un peu des dogmes, un peu une philosophie, un peu un espoir écologique. Le clean tech, il n'est pas du tout basé là-dessus. On peut retrouver des gens comme ça encore dans le clean tech. Mais qu'est-ce qui a fait naître le clean tech? C'est justement le venture cap américain, le capital de risque américain. Pourquoi? Parce qu'ils se sont dit, il y a 10 ans, il y a beaucoup d'infrastructures à refaire. Les routes, les aqueducs, le transport de l'énergie, etc. Il y a beaucoup de technologies qui se fait par à côté. Pourquoi est-ce qu'on n'utilise pas des nouvelles technologies pour refaire ces infrastructures-là? Et quand tu parles d'argent, bien, ces infrastructures-là représentaient des milliards de dollars. Et c'est comme ça qu'est né le clean tech. Le clean tech n'est pas né par des écologistes, il est né par des venture caps qui ont vu qu'il y avait des possibilités de faire de l'argent parce qu'il y avait beaucoup de choses à faire. Donc, d'une part, je pense que la réponse dirait est-ce qu'on doit modifier la mentalité des investisseurs, ça dépend lesquels, mais certains non, parce que depuis 2009, les investissements annuels privés et publics sont plus grands dans le clean tech que dans les technologies d'information. 2009 était l'année charnière. Donc, il y en a de l'argent dans ça, ce n'est pas nécessairement un problème d'argent. Par contre, deuxième réponse, c'est que quand tu travailles au Québec, avec des investisseurs et le R&D, pardon, je reprends la phrase, le capital de risque, il y a 15 ans au Québec, était à l'avant-garde du capital de risque canadien, en particulier à cause de l'industrie pharmaceutique. On avait 40% du capital de risque canadien qui était ici au Québec il y a 10 ans. Maintenant, c'est plus vrai, on est rendu à 20%, puis il est frileux en plus. Il a peur. Donc, ces gens-là ont besoin d'être informés Parce que, d'une part, oui, ils voyaient qu'il y avait des risques à prendre avec le pharma, mais qu'il y avait des chiffres mirobolants de marché. Quand tu inventes une capsule anticancéreuse, bon, tu sais que le marché mondial est énorme pour ça. Sauf qu'ils ne voient pas le même marché aussi facile, entre guillemets, du côté clean tech. Ça, je pense qu'ils font une erreur. Ça, il y a de la formation et de l'information à faire auprès de ces gens-là pour leur montrer que la grosse partie, je dirais les 2/3 probablement, des nouveaux produits reliés au clean tech sont des produits de substitution, c'est-à-dire des produits qui remplacent des produits déjà existants, mais qui ont des meilleures performances, souvent en termes de fonctionnalité, mais surtout qui ont des meilleures performances en termes d'impact environnemental. Et ça, il faut les habituer à ça et les connecter peut-être sur le capital de risque américain pour qu'on redevienne un peu plus audacieux au Québec face au capital de risque.
Someone wants to answer maybe the retraining of professors?
Your question is really about two different things, because the pure science that would be involved in the science center, I'm sorry, the name escapes me right now, but we're both talking about the same place. Like the Great Lakes. Experimental lakes for the Great Lakes. That's pure science as opposed to this other thing. So I agree with you. It shouldn't be the desire to invest in clean tech should not create a stampede of money away from basic science, especially basic science and basic environmental science. In the Jenkins panel review, though, the federal government did say we have X amount of dollars that we spend right now, and we're not putting one penny more into what we spend on an annual basis. We want to reallocate where those dollars go. So they said we're going to change the priorities of what we do because it is tight times. But you need to separate out what the investments are in basic science versus what's happening in clean tech, because they're at a different end of the spectrum. And I think you're smart to say that the people who are doing the basic science also need to be talking to the people who are developing the technologies and doing things that are closer to the commercialization of the spectrum.
Okay, another question?
Maybe I can make a comment. Sorry. Maybe I can make one quick question. Right now, there's an institute in Canada which is having a shift in terms of being a basic science technology to having now to manage lots of programs and technologies and so on, and a lot of and I get complaint from these guys because they complain that now they have to deal with so many of patents issues and stuff like this. So these scientists now spend most of their time, in some cases 75%, dealing with regulations issues and related to in a sense, it's part of the beginning of commercialization when you have to deal with the patent issues. So I think you have to be careful when you switch, the basic scientist to the commercialization phase. Sometimes you better go, in this case, for example, to a lawyer who has expertise in science and can do that job instead of training the scientists to do this. So,
but maybe just raising an awareness in the scientists that they have to talk to these people to make it work.
This is what I agree.
I mean, otherwise we lose our competitiveness, I think. You can't retrain people. I mean, it's so, to reach this level of expertise that these people achieve, you can't just add another skill on top of it.
But in the model of training a scientist in the PhD program, certainly you could implement some sort of course or
yeah, sure. Yeah, I agree.
I'm not saying retraining, I'm saying the process.
Yeah, it's like how they've changed things for doctors and for...
And it's almost like a culture shift.
Yes.
And how to think about like a scientific problem, not to view it as an isolated scientific problem, but to also think about the repercussions and what it actually is their need in society for what you're doing. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering what you guys see the role of innovation prizes in driving innovation, because I know the government over a year ago implemented it in e-health. Right, and I can't quite figure out if that was just a last-ditch effort because in light of other countries abandoning their e-health programs, or it's like a legitimate play.
And I'm sorry, what expression did you use? Innovation?
Innovation prizes. Innovation prizes? Is this working?
No, I didn't hear you.
It's like cash prize. Oh, there we go. It's working. Cash.
Innovation prizes.
Yeah.
Prizes.
Yeah, it's like cash prizes for
Oh,
someone
I
who
see.
can come up with a solution for something. And they just kind of, they don't make a distinct definition of what, well, they give a basic definition of what they want, but how you achieve it is kind of left up to who achieves it.
Right.
There's like the X Prize in the States.
Yeah, and then there's actually in, Richard Branson has a few that he's doing in the green space especially. I mean, those usually are private sector prizes, and they're meant to provide an award or an incentive for people to take a long view, right? You know, we have the Perimeter Institute in Canada. That was a private, like Lazarides had an interest in physics, but he knew that if he didn't create a space where people could go and think really long-term thoughts about theoretical physics, then we miss certain kinds of innovations. So, I mean, I think the motivation is right. I'm not sure how useful they are, but I think the motivation is right to get people to say it's worth taking a long shot to figure out whatever it is, the first solar car or something that wouldn't in the normal system get funded or get support.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the previous ones, like the commercial X Prizes, were all for, or like the physics prizes, were all long-term stuff, but the ones for e-health are just for really basic solutions that they want. And it seems like if the government is offering these prizes, then they can kind of be in there working towards the policy as well at the same time. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, Roger might have something to say about that because he thinks innovation is all the way to market. So.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to talk maybe more for Cascade in this case because I'm not. But I can tell you that we're doing it in Cascade, so we do recognize innovation. And I think you have to recognize innovation. It's really a source of motivation, and so that's number one. Number two. What I can see, we got issues with electronics here. So. I would say then it's good to most of the innovations are not are the work of many people. So therefore, you better I think recognize team rather than individual. The difference between an invention and innovation. Invention is a technological success. And innovation is a commercial success. When you get to commercial success, usually you get more people involved. So the recognition of team is I think a good way of handling this. Now I guess third part of your question is big money or small amount of money or sort of this is a totally different questions. And IBM, for example, they claim that in many conferences that they give some very, very small prize to innovative people, but it's small amount of money or recognition in a sense. And Cascade, we tend to go this way as well. So that's but we try both, and so we're back to the let's say the recognition based on something that you've achieved. We think it still has a lot of effect on the people and the team rather than big amount of money. Also, one last thing on this: the Japanese they don't necessarily recognize innovation, or they do it to a certain point. The reason is simple: is because it's part of their work. They don't. It's not a choice. It's not something which is optional. So you have to innovate. It's part of your own job, and we pay. This is why you get a salary. So that's also another aspect.
So I think we have another 5. How many minutes? 3 minutes left. So please get.
Yes, question. So, well, I'm really glad someone brought up basic science because what's happening in Canada right now is really a tragedy, and it's a complete massacre of basic science. So I'm really happy that you brought that up. But so my question is, I really like your application of ecosystems. In another sense, I think in terms of Canada's economy, when we talk about ecosystems, we talk about SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises. We also talk about the need to have a few large companies to act as incubators from which SMEs can learn from and benefit from as well. And so we've seen a lot of investment in certain sectors of Canadian society, but when we talk about things like tech startups, we know that they're undervalued on the TSX by 20 to 40%, which makes them very vulnerable to things like hostile takeovers. So I was wondering if you see the same kind of problem in terms of clean or green companies or clean tech companies. And also back to the Jenkins report that you mentioned as well. While it's true that the government did implement most of the recommendations, I think it's concerning that they ignored the last recommendation, which was to appoint a chief scientific advisor. So if you have any comments on that, that'd be useful as well.
Sure. So definitely you see that risk in clean tech. In fact, there was a great report written a couple of years ago that looked at, because clean tech overall has a longer R&D curve. It's sort of 12 to 15 years. Some other technologies, other advances have shorter lead times. So it's 12 to 15 years, which leaves the companies very vulnerable because they've usually played out all their capital just as their technology is starting to prove. And so it leaves them very vulnerable to take over. I mean, some people have criticized STTC because what it ends up being is a farm team for people to come to Canada and look at who the great technologies are, and the government of Canada invests in them, and then somebody's going to come along and poach the technology and take it elsewhere and develop the jobs and all that kind of thing. So you absolutely have to do that. But there was a report done that talked about if we're serious about this, we need to set an objective, which is to have, for instance, $100 million clean tech companies in Canada by 2020, so 20 by 20. And that if you were to do that, then you would have to start having a set of policies that would invest at that particular curve so that the companies weren't such takeover targets. And so that kind of discussion hasn't expanded at all. But it's true in general, it's true across a whole bunch of sectors. But we should be looking at more targeted policies in that particular area, because we don't crow about our own successes. We are globally competitive in every one of the 9 subsectors of clean tech today, right now. And those companies are exporting anywhere from 50 to 80%. Their markets and then their development is based on 50 to 80% going out in export markets and kicking back. They're doing really well, but they don't have a domestic market that's helping them, and that further weakens them at that critical phase. So it's definitely true in clean tech. There are things that municipal, provincial, federal governments could do to help support that, but we have to get serious. We have to set some kind of a long game objective about what we wanted to do in that area. And then your second question was about basic science.
It's on the chief scientific.
Chief scientific. So the other thing I'd say about the Jenkins panel is that I think the federal government has only began in response to it. So I think they sort of threw a couple of things on the table to say this is the first response, but that's a big report, and there's a lot in there, and I think there will be subsequent waves. Whether they'll actually do something about the science thing, I wouldn't hazard a guess, but I think we're going to see more on their response to the Jenkins panel.
Any other comments?
Very good.
Okay, then I think we leave it there and move on to the next topic. Thank you very much.